Hey everyone, my name is Wes, and welcome back to Terror Talk, where I discuss creepy clips online. Just to set up clear expectations, this is a commentary channel on scary stories and weird stuff. So, if commentary is your thing, you're in the right place. The original horror music at the end of my videos was composed by me. Now, let's get into it and have some fun.
When I was in the seventh grade, there was this kid named Sven in my homeroom. To put it mildly, he was a bit strange. He was one of those kids who didn't socialize with anyone else, even though people frequently tried to include him in things. I didn't have all my classes with him, but from what I remember, he would always sit in the same spot in every room, the back corner opposite the door. Without fail, he'd show up to school in the exact same outfit every day: cargo shorts and an oversized burgundy hoodie. He obviously didn't talk much, but when he did have to answer a question or read a passage, he had a really deep voice that lots of other kids made fun of him for. I don't recall him having any friends at all, which made sense. This one time, my friend Tyler caught him slicing worms during recess, which I'm pretty sure he ended up getting detention for. Speaking of recess, Sven would spend the whole period by himself next to the fence that bordered the woods.
Slicing worms, huh? That's a pretty weird activity, isn't it? Did you ever know anyone really odd like this in school, and do you have any horror stories about that? Let me know in the comments below because, yeah, there can be some pretty strange kids in school, I'm not gonna lie. And I think we've all had our encounters with one or two here and there. But let me know in the comments below if you've had any really weird kids or anything like that that you remember from school. Let me know in the comments below.
He never played any games or did anything even remotely kid centric. Just stand next to that fence doing God knows what. Some of my friends claim to have seen him talking to someone on the other side, but I've personally never seen that, so I'm not going to spread potential lies. I'm trying to think of other things about him worth mentioning. He had several quirks and some other weird habits typical of any strange middle schooler, but none relevant to the story I'm going to tell. This happened on the last day of school. I went to a pretty big middle school with lots of kids per grade, meaning there were a ton of concurring classes with students from the same year happening at all times. Because of that, there was this last day of school tradition where students from the same year would sneak into and sit in random classrooms to try and mess with the teachers. I'm pretty sure the teachers were privy to this and played along to amuse the kids, but that's neither here nor there. I don't remember the exact time this happened, but I do remember I was in one of the few classes I shared with Sven. Everything was exactly as it had been all day. The entire class was mixed up with random students that were supposed to be elsewhere. I was kind of a stickler for rules growing up. That's just how I was raised, so I never participated in any of the tomfoolery. My friends all did, though, so I was often alone in all of my classes since they went to other rooms together. This was one of those times. All my friends had left the room, and the only kid I knew even a little, coincidentally, was Sven. Sven was acting stranger than usual that day. That's something I remember distinctly. I can't fully remember what we were learning or doing in class, but I do remember that Sven was tapping his foot pretty aggressively, something he never did. He was also constantly looking around the room, as if searching for someone or trying to keep tabs on someone. I don't think he was watching me, but I couldn't be sure. The other thing I remember was that there were a lot more kids in the class I didn't recognize. Granted, one or two wasn't anything out of the ordinary since everything was switched around, but the odds that there were so many students I had never even seen before were slim. At some point, the teacher, I'm pretty sure her name was Miss Bell, told us to get into groups of 3 or 4 to work on some kind of end of year reflection worksheet. Nothing serious. Most kids just used it as an excuse to talk and mess around. At one point, Miss Bell walked over to her desk, picked up the classroom phone, and turned her back to us. A few minutes later, another teacher showed up, I think from the room next door. They stepped just outside the classroom door and started whispering. It wasn't a long conversation, maybe half a minute, but something about it felt off, like they were trying not to cause a scene. I could tell something was up. Miss Bell looked uneasy. That's honestly the best way I can describe her demeanor. After they finished talking, Miss Bell and the other teacher came back into the room. They didn't say anything to the class. They just walked over to a few specific kids and knelt down beside their desks. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but whatever it was quiet, clearly like they didn't want the rest of us to notice. A minute later, those same kids got up and followed the teachers into the hallway. No one really reacted. I felt like I was the only one who even noticed what was going on. Miss Bell came back a few minutes later, alone this time. She didn't say anything about the kids who left, just sat back down at her desk and started shuffling papers like nothing had happened. But right after she did, the fire alarm went off. Miss Bell didn't really react, like she knew it was going to happen. She told us to line up and head outside. We joined the rest of the school out by the field behind the building. As usual, everyone was grouped by homeroom, so I ended up standing with a bunch of familiar faces again. But while we were all standing there, I looked back at the school for no reason, just out of habit, I guess, and I could have sworn I saw something move in one of the second-story windows. It was quick, and maybe it was just a reflection or a shadow or something, but it felt wrong. The school was supposed to be completely empty. I kept it to myself, but I was really scared when it came to re-entering the building. We never went back inside, though. Before the alarm even stopped ringing, we started hearing sirens.
Wouldn't that be weird if you're supposed to be out, or if everyone is supposed to be out on a fire drill, and then you see something like that in the building, like someone moving around in there? That'd be pretty weird, wouldn't it? Almost like someone is in there that isn't meant to be in there. And it is. It would be unsettling for a kid to see that. But yeah, what would you think if you saw that? What do you think would be going on? Let me know in the comments below.
A few minutes later, police cars started pulling into the lot. Not just one or two, but a whole line of them. They didn't waste time either. Officers jumped out and rushed straight into the building. No one explained anything. Teachers just told us to stay calm and wait. After a while, someone came around and said school was being let out early. No buses. We had to call our parents. We were never told what actually happened. My parents ended up telling me what happened, or at least what the school had told them. They told me that a bunch of kids who didn't even go to our school had somehow gotten in. A rumor went around that they were planning to set the place on fire. Apparently, Miss Bell had discovered some very alarming tools in one of the kids' backpacks, and the school tried flushing everyone out with the fire drill. The details are still a bit fuzzy, so I'm hoping I'm explaining everything properly. The part that really stuck with me was what my mom said at the end, that the kids had been let in by Sven through the side fence during recess. The whole thing was so bizarre, it's still difficult to process even now. I never saw Sven again.
Wow, that is crazy, huh? That Sven let all these kids in that were apparently going to start a fire. And yeah, it's just very unsettling what mental illness is capable of. Because mental illness can range from, like, in wide spectrums, in my opinion, can it? And someone like Sven, who is probably often misunderstood, definitely unseen, people don't really get him. Like, that, that can really eat away at a kid over time, and as horrible as it is, I think that's how, killers are born. And obviously not everyone is going to be a killer just because they were ignored. Like, I think they have to have a lot of mental illness within them already for it to get to that point. But yeah, how creepy is it that all these kids that weren't supposed to be there were going to start a fire? That's really disturbing and unsettling. And all thanks to this one disturbed kid in general. Like, that is pretty wild, isn't it? But I thought this overall was a very creepy story. And I hope you enjoyed my commentary and the music, and I will see you in the next video.